The bitter wind howled through Santa Fe, New Mexico territory, on that January night in 1878, and Lucas Garrison knew that if he didn't find shelter soon, he might not see another sunrise. The snow had started as gentle flakes that afternoon, but transformed into a blinding storm that turned the world into a wall of white. His horse trudged through drifts that reached past her knees, and Lucas could feel her trembling beneath him. They had been traveling for 3 days straight from Albuquerque, where Lucas had delivered a herd of cattle for his employer, and now all he wanted was a warm bed and something hot to eat. The outline of buildings finally emerged through the storm, and Lucas exhaled in relief. Santa Fe was bigger than most towns he passed through, with adobe structures that seemed to grow from the earth itself. The plaza would normally be bustling with traders and travelers, but tonight the streets were abandoned. Lucas guided his mare toward what he hoped was the direction of a boarding house or hotel, squinting against the wind that threatened to tear his hat from his head. That was when he saw her, a figure huddled against the wall of a general store, barely visible through the snow. Lucas almost missed her entirely, but something made him look twice. She was wrapped in what appeared to be a thin shawl, her body curled into itself, shaking violently from the cold. Without thinking, Lucas dismounted and hurried toward her, his boots crunching through the fresh snow. "Madam," he called out, his voice nearly lost in the wind. "Madam, are you all right?" She looked up at him with dark eyes that seemed too large for her pale face. Her lips had taken on a bluish tint, and her teeth chattered so hard she couldn't form words. She was young, perhaps 25 or so, with black hair plastered to her forehead by melting snow. The shawl she wore was soaked through, offering no protection against the elements. Lucas didn't hesitate. He unfastened the thick wool blanket he kept rolled behind his saddle and immediately wrapped it around her shoulders. It was his best blanket, the one his mother had given him before he left Texas 5 years ago. The wool was thick and warm, woven with red and black stripes that his mother said would keep him safe. He had slept under that blanket through countless nights on the trail, and it had never failed him. "Here," he said, tucking it firmly around her. "You need to get warm." The woman's fingers clutched at the blanket, pulling it tighter around herself. She tried to speak, but her jaw was locked from the cold. Lucas looked around desperately for somewhere to take her. The general store behind them was locked tight for the night, and he couldn't see any lights in the nearby windows. "Can you stand?" he asked gently. She nodded, though Lucas could see it was more determination than actual capability. He helped her to her feet, keeping one arm around her waist to steady her. She was lighter than he expected, and he wondered when she had last eaten a proper meal. "My horse is just here," he said. "There has to be somewhere we can get you warm." "The mission," she managed to whisper through chattering teeth. "2 streets over." Lucas knew the mission she meant. He had passed through Santa Fe enough times to know that the old San Miguel mission offered shelter to those in need. He guided her toward his horse and helped her mount before swinging up behind her. She sagged against him, and he wrapped one arm around her waist to keep her from falling while using the other to guide his mare through the storm. The ride to the mission felt like it took hours, though it could only have been minutes. By the time they reached the heavy wooden doors, Lucas could barely feel his own fingers. He dismounted and lifted the woman down, then pounded on the door with his fist. An elderly priest opened the door, his weathered face showing concern as he took in the scene before him. "Bring her in, quickly," he said, standing aside. The interior of the mission was warm, heated by several fires burning in braziers along the walls. The priest led them to a small room near the back where several other travelers had taken shelter from the storm. Lucas helped the woman to a spot near one of the fires and made sure his blanket was still wrapped securely around her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice slightly stronger now that she was out of the wind. "I will repay you." Lucas knelt beside her, studying her face in the firelight. She was beautiful, he realized, with high cheekbones and expressive eyes that held a depth of sorrow he recognized all too well. But more than that, there was a strength in her gaze that drew him in. "You do not need to repay me," he said softly. "Just stay. Stay here where it is warm and safe." She looked at him for a long moment, and something passed between them that Lucas could not quite name. It was as if the world had narrowed to just the two of them, despite the other people in the room and the howling wind outside. The priest brought them both cups of hot broth, and Lucas insisted the woman drink hers first. He watched as color slowly returned to her cheeks and her shaking subsided. Only then did he take a sip of his own broth, grateful for the warmth that spread through his chest. "I am Natalie Navarro," she said after a while, her voice clearer now. "I suppose I owe you an explanation for why you found me freezing on the street." "You do not owe me anything," Lucas replied, but he found himself eager to hear her story nonetheless. Natalie pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, her fingers tracing the pattern of red and black stripes. "My husband died 3 months ago," she began, her voice quiet but steady. "Thomas was a good man. He worked as a blacksmith here in Santa Fe. We had a small house near the plaza, nothing fancy, but it was ours." Lucas remained silent, sensing there was more to the story. "When Thomas died, I discovered he had debts I knew nothing about, gambling debts." She said the words with a mixture of shame and anger. "I thought I knew my husband, but it seems he kept secrets. The men he owed money to came and took everything. The house, the furniture, even my wedding ring. They said if I could not pay what Thomas owed, they would take what I had." "That is not legal," Lucas said, his jaw tightening. "They cannot just take your property." Natalie laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Legal does not matter much when you are a widow with no family and no money for a lawyer. I tried to find work, but jobs for women are scarce here. I did washing and mending when I could, but it was not enough to pay for a room. For the past 2 weeks, I have been sleeping wherever I could find shelter. Tonight, the storm came on so suddenly. I thought I could make it to the mission, but the cold was too much." Lucas felt anger rising in his chest, not at Natalie, but at the injustice of her situation. He had seen plenty of unfairness in his years traveling through the West, but something about this woman's story affected him deeply. Perhaps it was the quiet dignity with which she told it, or perhaps it was something else entirely. "What about your family?" he asked. "Do you have anyone who could help?" "My parents died when I was young," Natalie said. "I was raised by the sisters at the convent in Las Cruces. Thomas was the only family I had." The priest returned then, bringing them bowls of stew and bread. "The storm shows no signs of letting up," he said. "You are both welcome to stay here tonight. We have blankets and a safe place to rest." Lucas nodded his thanks, but his mind was already working through a problem. He could not just leave Natalie here and ride away in the morning. The thought of her returning to the streets once the storm passed was unbearable. But what could he do? He was just a cowboy, working for wages and living out of his saddlebags most of the time. As if reading his thoughts, Natalie said, "Please do not worry about me. You have already done more than enough. Once the storm passes, I will find a way to manage." "How?" Lucas asked, more bluntly than he intended. "Forgive me, but you said yourself that work is scarce. Where will you go?" Natalie's eyes dropped to her hands. "I do not know," she admitted, "but I cannot be your burden." "You are not a burden," Lucas said firmly. The words surprised him with their intensity, but he meant them. No one deserves to be left out in the cold. They ate their stew in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Around them, other travelers settled in for the night, spreading blankets on the floor and banking the fires. The priest moved among them like a shepherd tending his flock, offering words of comfort and extra blankets where needed. Lucas found himself stealing glances at Natalie throughout the evening. There was something about her that captivated him, beyond just her beauty. It was the way she held herself with dignity despite her circumstances, the way she had thanked him even though she had nothing to give. He had met plenty of people in his travels, but none who had affected him quite like this. When it came time to sleep, Lucas gave Natalie his bedroll in addition to the blanket and insisted she take a spot close to the fire. He settled himself nearby, using his saddle as a pillow and his coat as a blanket. It was not the most comfortable he had ever been, but he had slept in worse conditions. "Lucas," Natalie said softly into the darkness. He had told her his name while they ate, though he could not remember exactly when. "Yes. Why did you help me? You do not know me. I could be anyone." Lucas thought about that for a moment. "My mother always taught me that the measure of a person is not what they have, but what they give when they have nothing left to give. I may not have much, but I have more than you did tonight. It seemed like the right thing to do." "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She was," Lucas said, his throat tightening slightly. "She died 2 years ago. Fever took her quick." "I am sorry," Natalie said, and Lucas could hear the genuine sympathy in her voice. They fell silent after that, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind shared between people who understand each other's pain. Lucas lay awake for a long time, listening to the wind howl outside and the quiet breathing of the people around him. His mind kept returning to Natalie, to the problem of what would happen to her when morning came. He could not leave her here. He knew that with a certainty that went bone deep. But he also did not know what other option there was. The storm continued through the night and into the next day. By morning, snow had piled so high against the mission doors that they had to dig their way out. The priest announced that travel would be impossible for at least another day, maybe longer. Lucas used the time to tend to his horse and think. Natalie spent the morning helping the priest and his assistant prepare meals for the stranded travelers. Lucas watched as she worked, noting the efficient way she moved and the kindness she showed to everyone around her. An old man struggling to stand received her gentle assistance. A child crying from hunger was soothed by her soft words. She gave of herself freely, even though she had nothing. "She is a good woman," the priest said, appearing beside Lucas. "She has been helping here when she can, even in her own time of need." "You know her situation then," Lucas said. The priest nodded. "I do. I have tried to help, but the mission has limited resources. We can offer shelter during storms and meals when we can, but we cannot house everyone permanently. There are too many in need and too little to go around." "It is not right," Lucas said. "What those men did to her, taking everything because of her husband's debts." "No, it is not right," the priest agreed. "But right and wrong often have little to do with what actually happens in this world. We can only do our best to help where we can." Lucas spent the rest of the day wrestling with his thoughts. By evening, he had made a decision. It was probably foolish, and it would certainly complicate his life, but he could not live with himself if he did otherwise. He found Natalie sitting alone near one of the fires, mending a tear in one of the priest's robes. Her fingers moved deftly with the needle, creating small, even stitches. "That is fine work," Lucas said, sitting down beside her. "The sisters taught me well," Natalie replied. "They believed every girl should know how to sew, cook, and keep a house. I suppose they were preparing us for marriage, though I do not think any of us truly understood what that would mean." "Was your marriage happy?" Lucas asked, then immediately wondered if he had overstepped. I am sorry, that is too personal. No, it is all right, Natalie said, pausing in her sewing. It was happy mostly. Thomas was a good husband when he was sober, but the gambling, I did not know about it until after he died. I keep wondering if I should have seen the signs, if I could have helped him somehow. You cannot blame yourself for his choices, Lucas said gently. I know that in my head, Natalie said, but my heart has a harder time accepting it. Lucas took a deep breath. I have a proposition for you, and I want you to hear me out before you say no. Natalie set down her sewing and turned to face him fully, curiosity in her eyes. I work for a ranch about 30 miles south of here, Lucas began. The owner, Mr. Patterson, is a fair man. He is always looking for good workers. I was thinking, if you wanted, you could come work there too. They need someone to help the cook and do mending and such. It would not pay much, but it would be honest work and a place to stay. Natalie stared at him, surprise evident on her face. You would do that for me? Recommend me for a job when you barely know me? I know enough, Lucas said. I have seen how you carry yourself, how you help others even when you have nothing. That tells me what kind of person you are. Besides, I am not asking you to marry me or anything like that. I am just offering to help you find work. The words came out more defensive than he intended, and Lucas felt heat rise to his face. The truth was, the thought of marriage had crossed his mind, which was ridiculous considering he had only known this woman for a day. But there was something about her that made him want to know more, to spend more time in her presence. I would need to think about it, Natalie said carefully. It is a generous offer, but I do not want to be a charity case. It is not charity, Lucas insisted. The ranch really does need help. Mrs. Patterson, the owner's wife, has been complaining about needing extra hands since their daughter got married and moved away. You would be earning your keep, same as anyone else. Natalie picked up her sewing again, but Lucas could see she was not really focusing on it. Why are you doing this? She asked softly. Truly, Lucas considered his answer carefully. Because when I look at you, I see someone who deserves better than what life has handed her. And because I want to see you smile, I have a feeling it would be something worth seeing. That earned him a small smile, barely there but genuine. I will think about your offer, Natalie said. That is all I can promise right now. That is all I ask, Lucas replied. The storm finally broke the following morning, leaving behind a world transformed by snow. The sun came out, blindingly bright against the white landscape, and people began to venture outside. Some of the travelers prepared to continue their journeys, while others settled in to wait for the roads to clear further. Lucas knew he needed to get back to the ranch soon. He had been away longer than planned, and Mr. Patterson would be wondering where he was. But he could not bring himself to leave without knowing what Natalie had decided. He found her outside, helping the priest clear snow from the mission steps. She had given him back his blanket, but he noticed she still wore it draped over her shoulders like a shawl. The red and black stripes stood out vividly against the white snow. Good morning, he said. Natalie looked up, shading her eyes against the sun. Good morning. It is beautiful, is it not? After all that darkness and cold, the sun feels like a blessing. It does, Lucas agreed. He hesitated, then asked, Have you thought any more about my offer? Natalie set down the shovel she had been using and turned to face him fully. I have thought of little else, she admitted. And I have decided, I would like to accept, if the offer is still open. Relief flooded through Lucas, so strong it surprised him. Of course it is still open. We can leave as soon as you are ready. I am ready now, Natalie said. I have nothing to pack, nothing to prepare. Everything I own is what you see. The simple statement broke Lucas's heart a little. Here was a woman who had lost everything, yet she stood tall and faced the future with courage. He wanted to promise her that things would get better, that life would be kinder from now on, but he knew better than to make promises he might not be able to keep. Instead, he said, "Then let us go talk to the priest and thank him for his hospitality. After that, we will head for the ranch." They found the priest in the small chapel, kneeling in prayer. He rose when he saw them and smiled warmly. "I see you have made a decision," he said to Natalie. "I have," she confirmed. "Lucas has offered to help me find work at the ranch where he is employed. I am going to accept his offer." The priest looked between them with knowing eyes. "Then I will pray for your safety on the journey and for good things in your future. Natalie, you know you are always welcome here if you need shelter again." "Thank you, Father," Natalie said, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything." They said their goodbyes and stepped out into the bright morning. Lucas helped Natalie mount his horse, then swung up behind her just as he had during the storm. This time, though, the sun was shining and the world felt full of possibility. The ride to the Patterson ranch took most of the day, as they had to travel slowly through the snow. Lucas found himself acutely aware of Natalie's presence in front of him, the way she fit perfectly in the circle of his arms as he held the reins. They talked as they rode, sharing stories of their lives. Lucas told her about growing up in Texas, the son of a farmer who had lost everything to drought and debt. He talked about leaving home at 18 to find work, about the years he had spent drifting from ranch to ranch until he found his place at the Patterson spread. He spoke of his mother's death and how it had left a hole in his life that nothing seemed to fill. Natalie told him about the convent where she had grown up, about the strict but loving sisters who had raised her. She described meeting Thomas at a church social when she was 20, how he had courted her with wildflowers and promises of a good life. She spoke honestly about their marriage, the good times and the struggles, and the shock of discovering his gambling debts after his death. "I was angry at him for a long time," she admitted. "Angry that he had kept secrets from me, angry that he had left me in such a terrible situation. But lately I have been trying to forgive him. Holding on to anger only hurts me, not him. He is beyond the reach of my anger now." "That is a very mature way to look at it," Lucas said. "I am not sure I could be so forgiving." "It is not easy," Natalie said. "Some days are harder than others. But I have to believe that Thomas did not mean for things to end this way. He had a sickness, the gambling. I do not think he could control it, even when he wanted to." They rode in companionable silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. The landscape around them was breathtaking, all rolling hills covered in pristine snow with mountains rising in the distance. The sky was so blue it almost hurt to look at, and the air was crisp and clean. "Tell me about the Pattersons," Natalie said after a while. "What are they like?" "Mr. Patterson is fair, like I said," Lucas replied. "He is a big man, tall and broad-shouldered with a voice that can carry across a canyon, but he has a good heart. He treats his workers well and pays honest wages. Mrs. Patterson is the real force behind the ranch, though. She is small but mighty, as my mother used to say, sharp as a tack and does not miss much. They have been married for 30 years and have 3 children, all grown now." "Do you think they will really hire me?" Natalie asked, and Lucas could hear the nervousness in her voice. "I am certain of it," Lucas said with more confidence than he felt. The truth was, he had not actually discussed this with the Pattersons beforehand. He was hoping that his good standing with them would be enough to get Natalie a chance to prove herself. The sun was beginning to set when they finally arrived at the ranch. It was a sprawling operation, with a main house, several barns, a bunkhouse for the workers, and various outbuildings. Cattle dotted the snowy fields, and Lucas could see smoke rising from multiple chimneys. He guided his horse toward the main house, a sturdy adobe structure with a wide porch and large windows. Before they had even dismounted, the front door opened and a woman stepped out. Mrs. Patterson was indeed small, barely reaching 5 feet tall, but she carried herself with an authority that made her seem much larger. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her sharp eyes took in the scene before her with obvious interest. "Lucas Garrison," she called out. "We were beginning to wonder if you had frozen to death in that storm. And who is this you have brought with you?" Lucas helped Natalie down from the horse before dismounting himself. "Mrs. Patterson, this is Natalie Navarro. I met her in Santa Fe during the storm. She is looking for work, and I thought perhaps you might have a position for her." Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows rose. "Did you now? And what makes you think we have work available?" "Because you have been complaining about needing help ever since Sarah moved away," Lucas said boldly. "And because Natalie is an excellent cook and seamstress who is willing to work hard." Mrs. Patterson turned her sharp gaze on Natalie, who stood straight and met her eyes without flinching. "Is that so? And what brings you to be looking for work in the middle of winter, Mrs. Navarro?" "It is just Natalie, madam," Natalie said quietly. "I am a widow. My husband passed 3 months ago, and I have fallen on hard times. Lucas offered to help me find honest work, and I am grateful for the opportunity." Something in Natalie's straightforward answer seemed to satisfy Mrs. Patterson. Her expression softened slightly. "Well, come inside then. You both look half frozen. We can discuss work over something hot to eat." The interior of the Patterson house was warm and welcoming, with thick rugs on the floors and comfortable furniture arranged around a large fireplace. The smell of cooking meat and fresh bread filled the air, making Lucas's stomach growl. He suddenly realized he had not eaten anything substantial since the stew at the mission the night before. Mr. Patterson emerged from a back room, and Lucas made introductions again. The rancher was every bit as imposing as Lucas had described, but his handshake was warm and his smile genuine. "Any friend of Lucas's is welcome here," he said. "The boy has been one of our best workers since he arrived 2 years ago. Never complains, always does what needs doing." They settled around the large dining table, and Mrs. Patterson served them plates of beef stew and fresh cornbread. As they ate, Lucas explained the situation more fully, including how he had found Natalie freezing on the streets of Santa Fe. "Those men had no right to take your property," Mr. Patterson said, his voice rumbling with anger. "That is theft, pure and simple." "I do not have the means to fight them," Natalie said simply. "So I must accept it and move forward." Mrs. Patterson studied Natalie throughout the meal, asking questions about her skills and experience. Natalie answered honestly, neither exaggerating her abilities nor underselling herself. By the time the meal was finished, Lucas could see that Mrs. Patterson was impressed. "I will give you a trial period," Mrs. Patterson finally announced. 2 weeks. You will help with cooking, cleaning, mending, and whatever else needs doing around the house. In return, you will receive room and board plus a small wage. If things work out after 2 weeks, we can discuss a permanent position." "That is more than fair," Natalie said, relief evident in her voice. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. I will not disappoint you." "See that you do not," Mrs. Patterson said, but there was a hint of warmth in her tone. "Lucas, show Natalie to the spare room off the kitchen. She can stay there. I am sure she would like to wash up and rest after your long journey." Lucas led Natalie through the house to a small but comfortable room that had apparently once belonged to the Pattersons' youngest daughter. It had a narrow bed with a thick quilt, a washstand with a basin and pitcher, and a small chest of drawers. A window looked out over the ranch yard. "It is perfect," Natalie said, running her hand over the quilt. "I cannot believe this is real. This morning I did not know where I would sleep tonight, and now I have a room and a job." "You have earned it," Lucas said. "You impressed Mrs. Patterson, which is not easy to do." Natalie turned to face him, and in the lamplight her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I do not know how to thank you, Lucas. You have given me more than just your blanket. You have given me hope." Lucas felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire in the next room. "I am glad I could help," he said softly. "Now you should rest. Tomorrow will be a busy day." He left her there and made his way to the bunkhouse, where he shared a room with 3 other ranch hands. They peppered him with questions about where he had been and who the woman was, but Lucas kept his answers brief. He was too tired for lengthy explanations. And besides, he was not entirely sure how to explain Natalie's presence or his own feelings about her. That night, as he lay in his bunk listening to the snores of the other men, Lucas found his thoughts returning again and again to Natalie. He barely knew her, yet he felt a connection to her that he could not explain. It was not just attraction, though he could not deny she was beautiful. It was something deeper, a sense that they understood each other in a fundamental way. He thought about the conversation during the storm when she had offered to repay him and he had told her to just stay. At the time, he had not thought about what those words might mean. But now, lying in the darkness, he found himself hoping that she would stay for a very long time. The next few days fell into a pattern. Lucas went about his usual work on the ranch, tending cattle, mending fences, and doing whatever else Mr. Patterson assigned him. But he found himself looking for excuses to go up to the main house, hoping for a glimpse of Natalie. He was not disappointed. Natalie threw herself into her work with determination, rising early to help prepare breakfast and staying up late to finish the day's mending. Mrs. Patterson, who Lucas suspected had tested many potential helpers over the years, seemed genuinely pleased with Natalie's performance. "That girl is a treasure," she told Lucas one afternoon when he came to the house to repair a broken window shutter. "She works hard, never complains, and has a gentle way with the animals. My old cat has been hiding under the porch for weeks, but yesterday Natalie coaxed her out, and now the creature follows her everywhere." Lucas smiled at that image. He had seen Natalie in the yard that morning with the orange tabby cat winding around her ankles while she hung laundry to dry. "I am glad it is working out," he said. Mrs. Patterson gave him a shrewd look. "You have feelings for her." It was not a question, and Lucas saw no point in denying it. "I do," he admitted. "But it is early days yet. She has been through a lot, and I do not want to push her into anything." "That is wise," Mrs. Patterson said. "Give her time to find her feet again. But do not wait too long, Lucas. Life is short and happiness is rare. When you find it, you should hold on to it." Her words stayed with Lucas as the days turned into weeks. He and Natalie fell into an easy friendship, talking whenever they had a chance, sharing meals when their schedules aligned. He learned that she loved music, but could not carry a tune to save her life, which she demonstrated one evening to his great amusement. She discovered that he had a talent for carving wood and convinced him to make her a small bird that she kept on the windowsill of her room. The 2 weeks of Natalie's trial period passed, and Mrs. Patterson officially offered her a permanent position. The relief on Natalie's face was profound, and that night she and Lucas sat on the porch of the main house, watching the stars come out. "I feel like I can breathe again," Natalie said. "For so long I have been just surviving, waiting for the next disaster. But now, for the first time since Thomas died, I feel like I might actually have a future." "You do," Lucas said. "You have proven yourself here. The Pattersons value you, and so do the rest of the workers." Natalie was quiet for a moment, then said, "And what about you, Lucas? Do you value me?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Lucas turned to look at her, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes. "I do," he said honestly. "More than I probably should, given how little time we have known each other, but I cannot help how I feel." "And how do you feel?" Natalie asked softly. Lucas took a deep breath. This was the moment, he knew, when he could either speak his truth or retreat into safety. He thought about Mrs. Patterson's words about not waiting too long for happiness. "I feel like I have been waiting for you my whole life without knowing it," he said. "From the moment I saw you in the snow, something in me recognized something in you. I know it sounds crazy, but it is the truth. I think about you constantly. When I am working, I am wondering what you are doing. When I see something beautiful, I want to show it to you. When I have good news, you are the first person I want to tell." Natalie's eyes had filled with tears, but she was smiling. "That does not sound crazy," she said. "It sounds exactly like how I feel about you." Lucas felt his heart leap. "Truly, truly," Natalie confirmed. "I have been trying not to feel this way. I told myself it was too soon, that I was still in mourning for Thomas, that I should not burden you with my feelings. But the truth is, I care for you deeply, Lucas. You saved my life, and then you gave me back my dignity by helping me find work. But more than that, you have shown me kindness without expecting anything in return. You have made me laugh when I thought I might never laugh again. You have reminded me that there is still goodness in the world." Lucas reached over and took her hand, feeling the calluses on her palm from weeks of hard work. "I do not want to rush you into anything," he said. "I know you have been through a lot, but I want you to know that I am here and I am not going anywhere." "I know," Natalie said, squeezing his hand. "And that means more to me than I can say." They sat together in the darkness, hands clasped, watching the stars wheel overhead. It was not a declaration of eternal love or a proposal of marriage, but it was a beginning. And for now, that was enough. As winter slowly gave way to spring, Lucas and Natalie's relationship deepened. They took walks together in the evenings when work was done, exploring the ranch and the surrounding countryside. Lucas showed her his favorite spots: a hidden canyon where wildflowers bloomed in the spring, a high ridge with a view that stretched for miles, a quiet grove of cottonwood trees where they could sit and talk without interruption. Natalie blossomed like the spring flowers. The gaunt, haunted look she had worn when Lucas first found her faded away, replaced by healthy color and genuine smiles. She gained weight from regular meals, and her eyes regained their sparkle. The other ranch workers took to calling her Natalie, and she became a beloved figure on the ranch, always ready with a kind word or a helping hand. Lucas found himself falling more in love with her every day. It was not just her beauty or her kindness, though both of those were considerable. It was the way she faced life with courage, the way she found joy in small things, the way she made him want to be a better man. One evening in late March, as they sat by the stream that ran through the Patterson property, Lucas gathered his courage to speak about the future. "Natalie," he began, "we have known each other for nearly 3 months now. I know that is not very long, but I feel like I know you better than I have known anyone else in my life." Natalie looked at him with those dark eyes that had captivated him from the first. "I feel the same way," she said. "I have been thinking," Lucas continued, "about what comes next. For us, I mean. I care for you deeply, and I believe you care for me too, but I do not know what you want, what you are ready for." Natalie was quiet for a long moment, trailing her fingers through the cool water of the stream. "When Thomas died," she finally said, "I thought my life was over. I thought I would never feel happy again, never feel safe again. I certainly never thought I would fall in love again." Lucas's breath caught. It was the first time either of them had used that word. "But I have fallen in love again," Natalie continued, looking directly at him now. "With you, Lucas. I love your kindness and your strength. I love the way you see the best in people. I love the way you make me feel safe and valued and cherished. I love you." "I love you too," Lucas said, his voice rough with emotion. "I have loved you since that first night in the snow, I think. Certainly since you smiled at me in the firelight at the mission." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. His hands were shaking slightly as he opened it to reveal a simple silver ring with a small turquoise stone. "It is not much," he said. "I have been saving my wages since Christmas, but I could not afford anything fancy. But Natalie, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Natalie's face as she nodded. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Lucas slipped the ring onto her finger and then he kissed her for the first time. It was gentle and sweet, full of promise and hope. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "I promise to make you happy," Lucas said. "I promise to take care of you and honor you and never give you reason to doubt my love." "I promise the same," Natalie said. "And Lucas, I need you to know something. I did love Thomas, but what I feel for you is different. It is deeper, truer. With Thomas, I was young and I thought I knew what love was. But now I know better. This is real love, the kind that will last." They told the Pattersons that evening, and the older couple was genuinely delighted. Mrs. Patterson hugged them both, and Mr. Patterson shook Lucas's hand with vigor. "I knew at the moment I saw you two together," Mrs. Patterson declared. "Some things are just meant to be." They decided to marry in late April, giving them time to prepare but not waiting so long that Lucas might lose his nerve. The wedding would be simple, held at the San Miguel Mission in Santa Fe with Father Miguel officiating. The Pattersons insisted on hosting a celebration at the ranch afterward. The weeks leading up to the wedding were busy ones. Mrs. Patterson helped Natalie sew a wedding dress from fabric they bought in Santa Fe, a simple but elegant design in cream-colored cotton. Lucas bought a new suit, his first ever, and spent hours polishing his boots until they shone. The other ranch hands teased him mercilessly, but with genuine affection. Lucas wrote to his sister in Texas, who he had not seen in 3 years, inviting her to the wedding. She wrote back that she could not make the journey but sent her blessing and a beautiful quilt she had made as a wedding gift. As the wedding day approached, Lucas found himself both excited and nervous. He was 26 years old and about to become a husband. The responsibility of that felt weighty, but also right. He could not imagine his future without Natalie in it. The night before the wedding, Mr. Patterson called Lucas into his office. The rancher poured them both a glass of whiskey and gestured for Lucas to sit. "I wanted to talk to you before tomorrow," Mr. Patterson said, "man to man." "Yes, sir," Lucas replied, wondering what this was about. "You are a good worker, Lucas," Mr. Patterson began, "and a good man. I have watched you over the past 2 years, and I have been impressed by your character and your work ethic. But more than that, I have seen how you are with Natalie. You treat her with respect and kindness. That tells me you will be a good husband." "I will try my best, sir," Lucas said. "I know you will," Mr. Patterson said. "Now I want to make you an offer. I am getting older, Lucas, and the ranch is getting to be more than I can manage on my own. My sons have no interest in ranching. They have their own lives elsewhere. I need someone I can trust to help me run things, someone who knows the land and the cattle and the men." Lucas waited, not sure where this was going. "I want to make you my foreman," Mr. Patterson said. "It comes with a significant raise in wages and a house of your own, one of the cabins up on the north pasture. It needs some work, but it is solid. I figure a newly married man needs a place to start his family." Lucas was stunned. "Sir, I do not know what to say. That is incredibly generous." "You have earned it," Mr. Patterson said firmly. "And it is not charity. I need a good foreman, and you are the best man for the job. What do you say?" "I say yes." Lucas replied, a grin spreading across his face. "Thank you, Mr. Patterson. You have given me more than I ever dreamed possible." "You have given yourself those things through hard work and good character," Mr. Patterson corrected. "I am just recognizing what you have earned. Now, drink up. Tomorrow you become a married man and your life is about to get a whole lot more complicated." They both laughed, and Lucas felt a surge of gratitude for this man who had taken a chance on a drifting cowboy 2 years ago. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and beautiful, with a sky so blue it looked painted. Lucas dressed carefully in his new suit, his hands fumbling with the buttons in his nervousness. The other ranch hands helped him, joking and offering terrible advice about marriage that made him laugh despite his nerves. They rode to Santa Fe in a wagon, Lucas and Mr. Patterson in front, Mrs. Patterson and several other ranch families following behind. The San Miguel mission looked beautiful in the morning light, its adobe walls warm and welcoming. Father Miguel greeted them at the door, smiling broadly. "This is a happy day," he said to Lucas. "I have watched Natalie grow from a frightened widow into a strong, joyful woman. You have helped her find herself again." "She has helped me find myself too," Lucas replied honestly. He waited at the altar, his heart pounding as the small congregation filed in and took their seats. Then the door opened, and Natalie appeared, and Lucas forgot how to breathe. She was radiant in her cream-colored dress, her dark hair loose around her shoulders and woven with wildflowers. She carried a simple bouquet of more wildflowers that she must have picked that morning. But it was her smile that truly made her beautiful, a smile of pure joy and love that was directed entirely at him. Mrs. Patterson walked beside Natalie, giving her away since she had no family of her own. When they reached the altar, Mrs. Patterson placed Natalie's hand in Lucas's and whispered, "Take care of each other." "We will," Lucas promised. Father Miguel began the ceremony, speaking about love and commitment and the sacred bond of marriage. But Lucas barely heard the words. He was too focused on Natalie, on the feel of her hand in his, on the way the light streaming through the windows made her hair shine, on the love he saw in her eyes. When it came time for the vows, Lucas spoke clearly and firmly. "I, Lucas Garrison, take you, Natalie Navarro, to be my wife. I promise to love you and honor you in good times and in bad, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, for all the days of my life." Natalie's vows were equally heartfelt. "I, Natalie Navarro, take you, Lucas Garrison, to be my husband. I promise to love you and honor you in good times and in bad, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, for all the days of my life. You saved me when I was lost, and I will spend the rest of my days making sure you never regret that kindness." "I could never regret it," Lucas whispered. And then Father Miguel was pronouncing them husband and wife, and Lucas was kissing his bride to the applause of their small but enthusiastic audience. The celebration at the ranch that followed was joyful and lively. Tables had been set up in the yard, laden with food that Mrs. Patterson and the other ranch wives had been preparing for days. There was music and dancing, and Lucas discovered that, while Natalie could not sing, she was an excellent dancer. They whirled around the makeshift dance floor, laughing and holding each other close. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Mr. Patterson stood and called for everyone's attention. "I want to make an announcement," he said. "As of today, Lucas Garrison is the new foreman of this ranch. He and his bride will be moving into the north cabin, which I hope will be the first of many happy homes for them." There were cheers and congratulations, and Lucas felt overwhelmed by the generosity and goodwill surrounding them. He pulled Natalie close and kissed her temple. "Can you believe this?" he murmured. A few months ago, I was just a cowboy with nothing to his name. Now I have a beautiful wife, a good job, and a home of our own. It is more than I ever dreamed possible, Natalie agreed. When you found me in the snow, I thought my life was over. But it was really just beginning. For both of us, Lucas said. As the celebration continued around them, they slipped away to see the cabin that would be their new home. It was a solid structure with 2 rooms, a main living area with a fireplace and kitchen, and a small bedroom. It needed work, as Mr. Patterson had said, but Lucas could already envision how it would look with some repairs and Natalie's touches to make it a home. "It is perfect," Natalie said, walking through the empty rooms. "We can make it beautiful." "It already is beautiful," Lucas said, "because you are here." That night, they stayed in their new home for the first time as husband and wife. Lucas had brought up their few belongings earlier, including the red and black striped blanket that had started everything. Natalie spread it on the bed, running her hands over the familiar pattern. "I will always treasure this blanket," she said. "It represents the moment when my life changed, when I met the man I was meant to be with." "Just a blanket," Lucas said softly, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "But it brought us together, so I guess it is the most valuable thing I own." "Not anymore," Natalie said, turning in his arms to face him. "Now the most valuable thing you own is me, and I own you, and we own this life together." They made love that night with tenderness and passion, discovering each other in the intimate way that married couples do. Afterward, they lay wrapped in the striped blanket, talking quietly about their hopes and dreams for the future. "I want children," Natalie said. "I always wanted to be a mother, and I thought that chance had passed me by. But now, with you, I feel like anything is possible." "I want that too," Lucas said. "A house full of children, growing up strong and healthy and loved. We will give them the kind of childhood I never had, full of stability and security." "We will," Natalie agreed. "And we will teach them kindness and generosity, the way you showed me kindness when I needed it most." They fell asleep in each other's arms, peaceful and content, ready to begin their new life together. The months that followed were busy ones. Lucas threw himself into his new role as foreman, earning the respect of the other workers through his fairness and hard work. He was up before dawn every day, overseeing the ranch operations and reporting to Mr. Patterson in the evenings. It was demanding work, but he loved it. Natalie made their cabin into a real home. She sewed curtains for the windows and cushions for the chairs Lucas built. She planted a garden outside where she grew vegetables and herbs. She kept the cabin spotlessly clean and always had a hot meal ready when Lucas came home in the evenings. But more than that, she made the cabin a place of love and laughter. Lucas would come home exhausted from a long day, and Natalie would have some small surprise waiting, a new carving she had attempted herself, a song she had heard in town that she wanted to share with him despite her terrible singing voice, a story about something funny that had happened that day. They fell into an easy partnership, each supporting the other in their work and dreams. On Sundays, they would ride into Santa Fe for church, often staying to visit with Father Miguel or shop in the market. Natalie loved these trips, browsing the stalls and chatting with the vendors, her Spanish flowing easily as she haggled over prices. Summer arrived, hot and dry, and Lucas worked long hours helping with the cattle and preparing for the drive to market. Natalie often brought him lunch in the fields, and they would sit together in whatever shade they could find, talking about their day. It was during one of these lunch visits in July that Natalie shared exciting news. "Lucas," she said, "I have something to tell you." He looked up from his sandwich, noting the excitement and nervousness in her voice. "What is it?" "I am with child," she said simply. The doctor in Santa Fe confirmed it yesterday when Mrs. Patterson and I went to town. We are going to have a baby. Lucas dropped his sandwich, heedless of the dirt, and pulled Natalie into his arms. "Truly?" he asked, his voice choked with emotion. "Truly," she confirmed, laughing and crying at the same time. "We are going to be parents, Lucas." He kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, tasting the salt of her happy tears mixed with his own. When they finally pulled apart, he kept his hands on her face, looking into her eyes with wonder. "I am going to be a father," he said, as if testing out the words. "We are going to have a child." "Are you happy?" Natalie asked, though she must have known the answer from the joy written all over his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Lucas said. "I am terrified and thrilled and amazed all at once. We made a life, Natalie. You and me together, we made a new life." They told the Pattersons that evening, and Mrs. Patterson immediately began fussing over Natalie, insisting she should not work too hard and should rest more. Mr. Patterson shook Lucas's hand with a grin and said he had known this was coming, that married couples always started having babies soon enough. The other ranch workers were happy for them too, though they teased Lucas mercilessly about becoming a father. He took the teasing good-naturedly, too excited to be bothered by anything. As Natalie's pregnancy progressed, Lucas found himself becoming increasingly protective. He worried when she lifted anything heavy, fretted when she felt tired or sick, and insisted she see the doctor regularly. Natalie tolerated his hovering with patience and amusement, gently reminding him that women had been having babies since the beginning of time. "I know," Lucas would say, "but this is our baby, and you are my wife. I cannot help but worry." "I know you cannot," Natalie would reply, kissing his cheek. "And I love you for it, but I am healthy and strong, and everything is going to be fine." As autumn arrived and Natalie's belly grew round with their child, Lucas felt a contentment he had never known before. He would lie in bed at night with his hand on Natalie's stomach, feeling the baby kick and move and marvel at the miracle of it all. "What do you want to name the baby?" Natalie asked one evening as they sat by the fire. "I have been thinking about that," Lucas admitted. "If it is a boy, I would like to name him after my father, James. He was a good man, even if life dealt him a hard hand." "James Garrison," Natalie said thoughtfully. "I like it, and if it is a girl—" "I was thinking we could name her after your mother," Lucas said. "What was her name?" "Maria," Natalie said softly. "But she died when I was so young I barely remember her. The sisters at the convent told me she was gentle and kind." "Then Maria it is," Lucas decided. "Either way, this baby will have a name that honors our families. And a future full of love," Natalie added. "That is the greatest gift we can give any child." Winter came again, almost a year after Lucas had first found Natalie freezing in the snow. On a cold January night with snow falling gently outside the cabin windows, Natalie went into labor. Lucas had never been so terrified in his life. Mrs. Patterson and the doctor were both there, calmly going about the business of delivering a baby, but Lucas felt like he might faint or be sick or both. He held Natalie's hand as she labored, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth and murmuring encouragement, though he felt completely helpless. "You are doing wonderfully," he kept saying. "You are so strong. I am so proud of you." Natalie gripped his hand so tightly during contractions that Lucas thought she might break his fingers, but he did not complain. If holding his hand helped her in any way, she could break every bone in his body and he would count it a privilege. After what felt like an eternity, but was really only a few hours, the baby was born. The doctor announced it was a boy, and then the most beautiful sound Lucas had ever heard filled the cabin as his son took his first breath and wailed his arrival into the world. "A boy," Natalie said weakly, tears streaming down her face. "We have a son, Lucas." "We have a son," Lucas repeated, his own vision blurred with tears. The doctor cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a soft blanket before placing him in Natalie's arms. Lucas looked down at his son for the first time, at the tiny perfect face and the small fists waving in the air, and felt his heart expand with a love so fierce it almost hurt. This was his child, his and Natalie's, the product of their love and the beginning of their family. "Hello, James," he said softly, touching one of those impossibly small hands with his finger. The baby's fist closed around his finger with surprising strength. "Welcome to the world, son. Your mother and I have been waiting for you." Over the next few weeks, Lucas discovered that being a father was both harder and more rewarding than he had imagined. James was a healthy baby with a strong set of lungs, and he made his needs known loudly and frequently. Lucas and Natalie took turns walking the floor with him at night when he cried, both of them exhausted but happy. Lucas found himself watching Natalie with James and falling in love with her all over again. She was a natural mother, tender and patient, singing to the baby even though she could not carry a tune, telling him stories even though he was too young to understand. She had a way of soothing James when he was fussy, rocking him and murmuring to him in Spanish until he calmed. "You are amazing," Lucas told her one night as she nursed their son. "I knew you would be a good mother, but you exceed all my expectations." "I could say the same about you as a father," Natalie replied with a tired smile. "You are so gentle with him, so patient. I see the way you look at him, like he is the most precious thing in the world." "He is," Lucas said simply. "You both are, my two greatest treasures." As spring arrived and James grew bigger and stronger, the Patterson ranch thrived under Lucas's management. Mr. Patterson had been talking about retiring more and more, leaving increasingly important decisions to Lucas. There was even talk of Lucas eventually buying a partnership in the ranch, though that was still years away, but for now, Lucas was content with his life. He had work that fulfilled him, a home he had helped build, a wife he adored, and a son who was growing more alert and active every day. When he thought back to the man he had been a year and a half ago, alone and drifting, he could barely recognize himself. One evening in May, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset with James sleeping peacefully in Natalie's arms, Lucas said, "Do you remember what you said that first night? When I gave you my blanket, I said I would repay you," Natalie replied. "And I told you to just stay," Lucas finished. "I had no idea then what those words would come to mean. I just knew I could not leave you in the cold. It was the best thing that ever happened to me," Natalie said. "That storm, as terrible as it was, brought you to me, or me to you. I have thought about it so many times. What if you had taken a different street? What if the storm had come a day earlier or later? What if you had ridden past without stopping?" "I do not think I could have ridden past," Lucas said. "I think we were meant to find each other, you and I. Everything in our lives, all the hard times and heartbreak, led us to that moment in the snow." "I believe that too," Natalie said. "And I have repaid you in a way, not with money or goods, but with my love and my loyalty and our son. I have given you everything I have." "And I have given you everything I have," Lucas said, "which is exactly how marriage should be, equal partners, sharing everything." James stirred in Natalie's arms, making the small sounds that meant he would be waking soon. Lucas reached over and took his son, cradling him carefully. The baby opened his eyes, dark like his mother's, and Lucas could swear he saw recognition there. "You are going to have a good life, James," he told his son. "Your mother and I are going to make sure of that. You will grow up knowing you are loved, knowing you are valued, knowing that family is the most important thing there is." "He will," Natalie agreed. "And maybe in a year or two he will have a brother or sister to play with. Lucas looked at her in surprise and delight. "You want more children?" "I do," Natalie said. "I want a house full of them, all the noise and chaos and love that comes with a big family." "What about you?" "I want that too," Lucas said. "I want everything with you, Natalie. A big family, a long life, growing old together on this ranch." "Then that is what we will have," Natalie said with certainty. They sat together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple and red. The air was warm and sweet with the scent of spring flowers, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed contentedly. It was a perfect moment, one that Lucas tried to commit to memory, knowing that life was made up of such moments strung together like beads on a string. The years that followed were good ones. James grew from a baby into a toddler, then into a bright, curious boy who followed his father everywhere around the ranch. He had his mother's dark eyes and his father's stubborn determination, and he kept both his parents constantly busy. When James was 2, Natalie gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Maria, after Natalie's mother. She was small and delicate, with Lucas's fair coloring and a temperament that was much calmer than her brother's had been. Lucas adored her instantly, this tiny girl who wrapped him around her finger from her first breath. 2 years after Maria came another son, Thomas, named after Natalie's first husband. Lucas had suggested it, knowing that while Natalie's first marriage had ended in heartbreak, Thomas had still been an important part of her life. Natalie had cried when he suggested the name, grateful that Lucas could honor her past while building their future together. The cabin that had once seemed spacious now felt cramped with 3 young children, and Lucas began planning an addition. With Mr. Patterson's approval and help from the other ranch hands, he spent the better part of a year building 2 more rooms onto the cabin, giving the children their own space and adding a proper dining area. Natalie continued to help Mrs. Patterson at the main house when she could, though managing 3 children left her little free time. She had become an expert seamstress, and women from Santa Fe would sometimes travel out to the ranch to commission her work. The extra income was welcome, though Natalie always insisted they save most of it for the children's future. Lucas had indeed become a partner in the ranch when James turned 5. Mr. Patterson drew up papers making him a junior partner, with the understanding that Lucas would eventually inherit the majority share since the Pattersons' own children had no interest in ranching. It was more than Lucas had ever dreamed possible for a boy who had started with nothing. But of all his accomplishments, his proudest was his family. He loved coming home each evening to the chaos of 3 children clamoring for his attention, to Natalie's warm embrace and the dinner she had prepared. He loved Sunday mornings when they would all pile into the wagon and head to Santa Fe for church. The children dressed in their best clothes and on their best behavior, at least until the service was over. He loved quiet evenings after the children were in bed, when he and Natalie could sit together and talk about their day, about their dreams for the future, about the life they were building together. Sometimes they would pull out the old striped blanket, now worn soft with age and use, and remember that snowy night when their lives had changed forever. You ever think about what might have happened if things had gone differently? Natalie asked one such evening when James was 7, Maria 5, and Thomas 3. "Sometimes," Lucas admitted, "but I cannot imagine my life any other way than this. Even if I could go back and change things, I would not. Every hardship, every struggle led me to you, and you are worth all of it." "As are you," Natalie said. "I was so lost when you found me, Lucas, not just physically lost in the storm, but lost in my life. I did not know who I was or what I would become. You gave me back myself." "We gave each other everything," Lucas said. That is what love is, I think. Not just the romantic part, though that is important too, but the everyday choosing to be partners, to build something together, to face whatever comes side by side. I choose you, Natalie said. Every day I choose you. And I choose you, Lucas replied, kissing her softly. Every day for the rest of my life. The children continued to grow, each developing their own distinct personality. James was serious and responsible, often helping his father with chores around the ranch. He had a gift with animals and could gentle even the most skittish horse. Maria was creative and dreamy, always drawing or making up elaborate stories. She had inherited her mother's skill with a needle and was already making her own doll clothes by the time she was 6. Thomas was the wild child, always getting into mischief, but with such charm that it was impossible to stay angry at him for long. Lucas and Natalie raised them with the values they believed in: kindness, hard work, honesty, and generosity. They told their children about how they met, though they simplified the story for young ears. The children loved hearing about the snowstorm and the blanket, about how their father had saved their mother's life. "You are a hero, Papa," Maria would say, climbing into Lucas's lap. "I am just a man who did what anyone should do," Lucas would reply. "You see someone in need, you help them. That is not being a hero, that is just being human." But to his children, he was a hero, and Lucas tried to live up to that image. He wanted to be the kind of father he had never had, present and loving, stern when necessary but always fair. He wanted his children to know they were valued, that their thoughts and feelings mattered. Natalie was equally devoted as a mother, patient with the children's endless questions and boundless energy. She taught them letters and numbers before they were old enough for school, read to them every night, and made sure they knew they were loved unconditionally. When James turned 10, Lucas began teaching him the business side of ranching. The boy would sit in on meetings with Mr. Patterson and Lucas, learning about cattle prices and feed costs and how to manage workers fairly. He proved to be a quick study, and Lucas felt a pride that went beyond words, knowing his son might carry on the ranching tradition. Maria, at 8, was already helping her mother with the household accounts and showing an interest in the ranch's business dealings as well. She had a head for numbers that surprised everyone, and Mrs. Patterson joked that Maria would probably end up running the whole operation someday. Thomas, now 6, was still trying to figure out where his interests lay. He loved the horses like his brother, but also showed artistic talent like his sister. Lucas told him there was no rush to decide, that he had plenty of time to discover his path. The years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the milestones of family life. Lucas and Natalie celebrated their 10th anniversary with a trip to Albuquerque, leaving the children with the Pattersons for a week. It was their first time alone together since James had been born, and they relished the opportunity to reconnect as a couple. "I love our children more than life itself," Natalie said as they walked through the Albuquerque plaza hand in hand, "but I had forgotten what it was like to be just us." "I know what you mean," Lucas agreed. "We are parents now, and that is wonderful. But we were husband and wife first, and it is good to remember that." They returned home refreshed and even more in love, if such a thing were possible. The children welcomed them back with enthusiasm, and life returned to its normal busy rhythm. Mr. Patterson passed away peacefully in his sleep when Lucas was 35 and Natalie 33. It was a sad time for everyone on the ranch, but especially for Lucas, who had looked up to the older man as a mentor and father figure. The funeral was well attended, with people coming from all over New Mexico territory to pay their respects to a man who had been fair and generous. Mrs. Patterson decided to move to Albuquerque to live with her daughter, leaving the ranch entirely in Lucas's hands. It was a huge responsibility, but Lucas felt ready for it. He had been essentially running the operation for years anyway, and he had Natalie by his side to help him make decisions. Under Lucas's sole ownership, the Patterson Ranch, which he renamed the Garrison Ranch, continued to thrive. He ran it with the same principles Mr. Patterson had taught him, treating workers fairly and managing the land responsibly. He earned a reputation as one of the best ranchers in the territory, and people would come from miles around to buy his cattle or seek his advice. But for all his professional success, Lucas's greatest joy remained his family. He watched with pride as his children grew into fine young people. James, at 18, was already taking on significant responsibility at the ranch. Maria, at 16, was talking about becoming a teacher. Thomas, at 14, had discovered a love of horses and was training to be a breaker. "We have done well," Lucas told Natalie one evening as they sat on the porch of their expanded home, now a proper house with 6 rooms. "Our children are healthy and happy and good people. That is the greatest success any parent can hope for." "We have done very well," Natalie agreed. She was 40 now, with threads of silver in her dark hair, but to Lucas, she was as beautiful as the day he had first seen her in the snow. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life. I went from having nothing to having everything that matters." "We went from nothing to everything," Lucas corrected. "Together." When James turned 21, he announced he was courting a girl from Santa Fe, the daughter of the general store owner. Her name was Rebecca, and when James brought her home to meet his parents, Lucas and Natalie both approved immediately. She was kind and sensible, with a good sense of humor and clearly devoted to James. They married a year later, and Lucas felt a bittersweet mixture of joy and loss watching his oldest son start his own family. James and Rebecca built a small house on the far end of the ranch property, and James continued working as Lucas's right hand in running the operation. 2 years later, Maria married a teacher from Santa Fe, a gentle man named Robert who appreciated her intelligence and creativity. They moved to Santa Fe where Robert had a position at the school, but they visited the ranch often. Thomas, now 19, was still unmarried and in no hurry to change that, much to his mother's good-natured teasing. Lucas was 44 and Natalie 42 when their first grandchild was born, a boy that James and Rebecca named Lucas after his grandfather. Holding his grandson for the first time, Lucas felt the circle of life complete itself in a profound way. "I am a grandfather," he said to Natalie, wonder in his voice. "And I am a grandmother," she replied, looking at the sleeping baby with tears in her eyes. "We have come so far, Lucas." From that night in the snow to this moment, holding our grandchild, life is truly miraculous. They continued to age together gracefully, remaining active and involved in the ranch and their growing family. Maria and Robert eventually had 3 children, and Thomas finally married at 25 to a widow he met in Albuquerque. Life stayed busy and full. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Lucas took Natalie back to the San Miguel Mission in Santa Fe, to the place where they had married. Father Miguel had long since passed away, but the current priest welcomed them warmly. They renewed their vows in a simple ceremony with just their children and grandchildren present. "I, Lucas Garrison, promise again to love and honor you, Natalie, for all the days I have left," Lucas said, his voice strong despite his age. "And I, Natalie Garrison, promise again to love and honor you, Lucas, for all the days I have left," Natalie replied. "You saved my life that snowy night, and every day since then has been a gift." "You saved my life too," Lucas said. I just did not know I needed saving until I found you." They celebrated that evening at the ranch with a huge party, all their children and grandchildren, and the ranch workers and friends from Santa Fe. There was music and dancing and more food than they could eat. Lucas and Natalie danced together as they had on their wedding day, older now but no less in love. "Another 25 years," Lucas said as they swayed to the music. "That is what I want. Another 25 years with you." "Then that is what we will have," Natalie said with the same certainty she had shown all those years ago when planning their future. "We have beaten worse odds than aging." They did indeed have more years together, good years filled with the love of family and the satisfaction of a life well lived. They watched their grandchildren grow, saw the ranch continue to prosper, and enjoyed the respect of their community. Lucas was 53 and Natalie 51 when they sat together one winter evening, watching snow fall gently outside their window. It was reminiscent of that night so long ago when they had first met, and they both felt the symmetry of it. "You remember what I told you that night?" Lucas asked, the old striped blanket wrapped around both their shoulders. "When you said you would repay me." "You told me to just stay," Natalie said, snuggling closer to him. "And I have stayed. For 27 years now I have stayed by your side." "Best decision I ever made," Lucas said. "Offering you that blanket, asking you to stay. Everything good in my life came from that one moment of choosing to stop and help someone in need." "Everything good in my life came from accepting your help," Natalie said. "From trusting you when I had no reason to trust anyone. From believing that not all men were like the ones who had wronged me." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow accumulate on the ground outside. The house was quiet, their children grown and living their own lives, but the silence was peaceful rather than lonely. They had each other as they always had, as they always would. "I love you, Natalie Garrison," Lucas said. "I have loved you from the moment I saw you in the snow, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "And I love you, Lucas Garrison," Natalie replied. "You are my hero, my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life. Everything I am, everything I have, is because you chose to stop that night and offer kindness to a stranger." "Not a stranger," Lucas corrected gently. "The other half of my soul, I just had not met you yet." They continued to sit together as the snow fell, wrapped in the blanket that had started it all, warm and safe and deeply, completely in love. Outside, the world was cold and harsh, but inside they had created a home filled with warmth and love and all the things that truly mattered. Lucas thought back over his life, over all the twists and turns that had led him to this moment. If he had not taken the job at the Patterson Ranch, if he had not been traveling through Santa Fe that particular night, if he had chosen a different street or ridden past without stopping, his entire life would have been different. He would have missed out on the greatest love he had ever known, on the family they had built together, on the life they had created from nothing but determination and devotion. But he had stopped. He had given his blanket to a freezing widow, and when she had said she would repay him, he had told her to just stay. And she had stayed, not just that night but for all the nights and days that followed, building a life with him that exceeded his wildest dreams. It was the greatest decision either of them had ever made, that choice to trust each other, to build something together, to face whatever came with united hearts. And as they sat together in their home, surrounded by the evidence of their love in photographs and grandchildren's drawings, and the memories held in every corner of every room, they knew they had succeeded beyond measure. Their story, which had begun with a simple act of kindness on a snowy night, had grown into a legacy of love that would continue through their children and grandchildren. The blanket that Lucas had given Natalie all those years ago was still there, still keeping them warm, a tangible reminder of where they had started and how far they had come. As the years continued to pass, Lucas and Natalie remained active and involved in ranch life well into their 60s. Lucas officially turned over the day-to-day operations to James when he turned 60, but he still consulted on major decisions and enjoyed riding out to check on the cattle. Natalie spent her time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, passing on the skills and stories that connected them to their family history. They would often tell the story of how they met to the younger generation, showing them the old striped blanket that was now carefully stored in a cedar chest. The blanket had become a family treasure, a symbol of the love and kindness that had founded their family. On Lucas's 70th birthday, the whole family gathered for a celebration. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren filled the house and yard, representing 3 generations of Garrisons. As Lucas looked around at all these people, all these lives that existed because he had stopped to help a woman freezing in the snow, he felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Speech. Someone called out, and others took up the cry until Lucas had no choice but to stand and address his family. "I am not much for speeches," he began, his voice still strong despite his age. "But I will say this. Everything you see here, everyone in this family, exists because of one simple choice made on a cold night 43 years ago. I chose to stop and help someone in need. Your grandmother chose to accept that help and to stay when she could have left." He reached for Natalie's hand, pulling her up to stand beside him. She was 70 now, her hair completely silver, but her eyes still sparkled with the same light he had first seen in the firelight at the mission. "We built this family on kindness and love and the belief that together we could face anything," Lucas continued. "We have tried to pass those values on to all of you. Be kind to each other, take care of each other, and when you see someone in need, stop and help them. You never know what might come from one act of kindness." There was applause and tears, and then the party continued with more food and music and stories. Lucas and Natalie sat together, watching their family celebrate, and felt the deep satisfaction of a life well lived. Lucas passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, with Natalie holding his hand. His last words to her were, "I love you. Thank you for staying." Natalie lived another 5 years after Lucas's death, remaining active and engaged with her family. She often sat on the porch of the house she and Lucas had built, wrapped in the old striped blanket, remembering all the years they had shared. When she died at 83, also peacefully in her sleep, the family found her with the blanket wrapped around her and a smile on her face. They were buried side by side on a hillside overlooking the ranch, under a cottonwood tree where they had often sat together during their life. Their headstone bore a simple inscription, "Lucas Garrison and Natalie Garrison. He offered kindness, she offered love. Together they built a legacy." The striped blanket remained a family treasure, passed down through the generations. Each generation of Garrisons would tell their children the story of how great-grandfather Lucas had saved great-grandmother Natalie with that blanket, how her offer to repay him had been met with a request to simply stay, and how that one moment of kindness had created a family dynasty that continued to this day. The ranch remained in the Garrison family, run by Lucas and Natalie's descendants, who carried on the values of fairness, hard work, and generosity that their ancestors had established. And every winter, when the snow fell thick and white over Santa Fe and the ranch beyond, someone in the family would pull out the old striped blanket and remember the love story that had started it all. It was a story of kindness in the face of hardship, of love that conquered loss, of two people who had found each other in the darkest moment and built a light that would shine for generations. It was a story that proved that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion can have the greatest impact, that sometimes stopping to help a stranger can change not just their life, but your own in ways you never imagined possible. And it was a story that reminded everyone who heard it that love, real love, was not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was about choosing to stay, about building a life together one day at a time, about facing whatever comes with united hearts and unwavering commitment. It was about a cowboy who gave his blanket to a freezing widow, and the widow who repaid him with a lifetime of love.